Welcome back, listeners, to Sandman Stories Presents. Today we have a story about a man who is looking for fear. The young man seems to be not afraid of anything, even when his life is in danger. So how can he learn what fear is? Listen and find out. Some of the original story features some anti-Semitism, so I rewrote that part. If you're looking for the original, I will link to it in the story notes. And there's a few Turkish words. Helwa is a sweet snack, and a kadi is a local magistrate. Okay, let's begin. Fear. Once, a very long time ago, there was a woman who had a son. Sitting both together one evening, the mother said to her son, "Go, my child, and shut the door, for I have fear." "What is fear?" the boy asked his mother. "When one is afraid," was the answer. "What then can this thing fear be?" pondered the son. "I will go and find it." So he set out and came to a mountain where he saw 40 robbers who lit a fire and seated themselves around it. The youth went up and greeted them, whereon one of the robbers addressed him. "No bird dares to fly here. No caravan passes this place. How then do you dare to venture?" "I am seeking fear. Show it to me." "Fear is here, where we are," said the robber. "Where?" inquired the youth. Then the robber commanded, "Take this kettle, this flour, fat, and sugar. Go into that cemetery yonder, and make helwa there." "Okay," replied the youth, and went. In the cemetery he lit a fire and began to make helwa. As he was doing so, a hand reached out of the grave, and a voice said, "Do I get nothing?" Striking the hand with a spoon, he answered mockingly, "Naturally, I should feed the dead before the living." The hand vanished, and having finished cooking the helwa, the youth went back to the robbers. "Did you find it?" they asked him. "No," he replied. "All I saw was a hand which appeared and demanded helwa, but I struck it with a spoon and saw no more of it." The robbers were astonished. Then another of them remarked, "Not far from here is a lonely building. There you can, no doubt, find fear." He went to the house and entering, saw on a raised platform a swing in which a child was weeping. In the room was a girl running here and there. The maiden approached him and said, "Let me upon your shoulders. The child is crying, and I must quieten it." He consented, and the girl mounted. While occupied with the child, she began gradually to press the youth's neck with her feet until he was in danger of strangulation. Presently, with a jerk that threw him down, the girl jumped from his shoulders and disappeared. As she left, a bracelet fell from her arm to the floor. Picking it up, the youth left the house. As he passed along the road, a rich man, seeing the bracelet, accosted him. "That is mine," he said. "No, it is mine," was the rejoinder. "Oh, no, it is my property," retorted the rich man. "Then let us go to the Cadi," said the youth. "If he awards it to you, it shall be yours. If, however, he awards it to me, it remains in my possession." So accordingly they went, and the Cadi said, "The bracelet shall be his who proves his case." Neither, however, was able to do this, and finally the judge ordered that the bracelet should be impounded till one of the claimants should produce its fellow, when it would be given up to him. The rich man and the youth then parted. On reaching the coast, the boy saw a ship tossing to and fro out at sea, and heard fearful cries proceeding from it. He called out from the shore, "Have you found fear?" and was answered with the cry, "Oh, woe! We are sinking!" Quickly divesting himself of his clothes, he sprang to the water and swam toward the vessel. Those on board said, "Someone is casting our ship to and fro. We are afraid." The youth, tying a rope around his body, dove to the bottom of the sea. There he discovered that the daughter of the sea, Deniz Gizi, was shaking the vessel. He fell upon her, flogged her soundly, and drove her away. Then, appearing at the surface, he asked, "Is this fear?" Without awaiting an answer, he swam back to the shore, dressed himself, and went his way. Now as he was walking he saw a garden, in front of which was a fountain. He resolved to enter the garden and rest a little. 3 pigeons flew around the fountain. They dove down into the water, and as they came up again and shook themselves, each was transformed into a maiden. They then laid out a table complete with drinking glasses. When the first carried the glass to her lips, the others inquired, "To whose health do you drink?" She answered, "To that of the youth who, in making helwa, was not dismayed when a hand was stretched out to him from a grave." As the second maiden drank, the others again asked, "To whose health do you drink?" And the answer was, "To the youth on whose shoulders I stood, and who showed no fear, though I nearly strangled him." Thereupon the third took up her glass. "Who are you thinking of?" questioned the others. "In the sea, as I tossed a ship to and fro," the maiden replied, "a youth came and flogged me so soundly that I nearly died. I drink to his health." Hardly had the speaker finished when the youth appeared and said, "I am that youth." All 3 maidens hastened to embrace him, and he proceeded, "At the Cadi's I have a bracelet that fell from the arm of one of you. A rich man would have deprived me of it, but I refused to give it up. I am now seeking its match." The maidens took him to a cave where a number of stately halls opened before him, and overwhelmed him with astonishment. Each was filled with gold and costly objects. The maidens gave him the second bracelet, with which he went directly to the Cadi and received the first, returning without losing any time to the cave. "Leave us no more," said the maidens. "That would be very nice," replied the youth, "but until I have found fear I can have no rest." Saying this he tore himself away, though they begged him earnestly to remain. Presently he arrived at a place where there was an immense crowd of people. "What is the matter?" inquired the youth, and he was informed that the Shah of the country was no more. A pigeon was to be set free, and he on whose head the bird should land would be declared heir to the throne. The youth stood among the curious sightseers. The pigeon was let loose, spun about in the air, and eventually descended on the youth's head. He was at once hailed as Shah, but as he was unwilling to accept the dignity, a second pigeon was sent up. This also rested on the youth's head. The same thing happened a third time. "You are our Shah," shouted the people. "But I am seeking fear. I do not want to be your Shah," he replied, resisting the efforts of the crowd to carry him off to the palace. His words were repeated to the widow of the late ruler, who said, "Let him accept the dignity for tonight at least. Tomorrow I shall show him fear." The youth consented, though he received the not very comforting news that whoever was Shah one day was on the following morning a corpse. Passing through the palace, he came to a room in which he observed that his coffin was being made and water being heated. Nevertheless, he lay down calmly to sleep in this chamber. But when the slaves departed, he arose, took up the coffin, set it against the wall, lit a fire around it, and reduced it to ashes. This done, he lay down again and slept soundly. When morning broke, slaves entered to carry away the new Shah's corpse. But they rejoiced at beholding him in perfect health, and hurried to the Sultana with the glad tidings. She thereupon called the cook and commanded, "When you lay the supper tonight, put a live sparrow in the soup." Evening came. The young Shah and the Sultana sat down to supper, and as the dish was brought in, the Sultana said, "Lift the lid of the dish." "No," answered the youth, "I do not wish for soup." "But please lift it," repeated the Sultana persuasively. Now as the youth stretched out his hand and lifted the lid, a bird flew out. The incident was so unexpected that it gave him a momentary shock of fear. "See," cried the Sultana, "that is fear." "Is that so?" asked the youth. "You were indeed afraid," replied the Sultana. Then the marriage feast was ordered, and it lasted 40 days and 40 nights. The Shah had his mother brought to his palace, and they lived happily ever after. The end. I quite enjoyed this story. I liked how he was going through life looking for fear and just not being afraid of any of these strange and terrifying things. Not even the news of his own death and the sight of the coffin scared him. but rather it was a big bird in the soup that scared him. So very interesting. All right, and the podcast shout-out is to the Tabi-Tabi Pod, hosted by Ethan. She talks about Philippine folklore, mysteries, paranormal stories, and sometimes even foreign myths. I love learning all about these kind of things, and what better way to learn than from someone who is a part of the culture. Ethan is really kind and does a lot to bring traditional folklore to an English-speaking audience. Salamat po, Ethan. And if you like her podcast as much as I do, go and give her a listen and a review on Podchaser, Good Pods, or iTunes. And the listener shout-out is to Scotland. I have a few friends from Scotland, and some of them live there still. Currently, a friend of mine from South Africa is studying there and is working towards her PhD. Also, my parents are in love with the TV show focused on the sheep farmers on the Western Isles, and I think a family trip is in order. I'm going to attempt Scots Gaelic. If I make a big mistake, I'm sure somebody will let me know. Tak believe ich java. Thank you, and good night.